So here's an overview of our standards for the geography of Africa. SS7G1. The student will locate selected features of Africa. Now in this standard, of course, we know the word locate. That means to be able to find these things on a map. Now after you watch this, of course, you're going to want to take a look at our mapping video to help you find all of these things and practice it on your own map. Now for element A, these are all of our physical features. And it looks like a pretty long list. It is a long list, but the good thing is that we can break these down into similar features. For example, of the features you need to know, there's only two deserts, the Sahara and the Kalahari. We have three rivers, those being the Congo, the Niger, and the Nile rivers. Two lakes, Lake Tanganyika and Lake Victoria, and one mountain range, that's the Atlas Mountains. Element B shows our political features. There are 7 countries here that we need to learn about. There's the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Egypt, Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, Sudan, and South Sudan. That's not really that long a list. It's only 7 countries. Considering the fact that Africa has 58, that's a pretty easy list to learn. Again, you're going to want to see our mapping video and make sure you practice this on a map of your own. In SS7G2, the student will discuss environmental issues across the continent of Africa. Now, these environmental issues pretty much all boil down to water and soil. And of course, the environmental problems faced by Africa are heavily influenced and heavily pressured by the fact that you see enormous population growth there. So in element A, explain how water pollution and the unequal distribution of water impacts irrigation, trade, industry, and drinking water. Now you know that water is important for people. They need that water for drinking, but it's also necessary for them to grow food. That's where the crop irrigation comes in. And waterways are very important as far as trade is concerned and business. In order to produce things, you need to use water a lot of the time. And you also need that water as a source of transportation. Now in element B, looking at deforestation. Explain the relationship between poor soil and deforestation in sub-Saharan Africa. Now we know that that soil is real important for them to grow food. And if you have an area where the soil is not good enough, doesn't have enough nutrients to support agriculture, very often what will happen is people will cut down trees, a thing called slash and burn agriculture. They'll cut it down and burn it, and then the soil will be good for a season or two. Unfortunately, though, that's only a temporary solution, and these forests are often not regrown. And when the forest goes away, of course, the lack of trees then contributes to soil erosion, and kind of leads to what we see in element C. In element C, explain the impact of desertification on the environment of Africa from the Sahel to the rainforest. Desertification, that's the permanent loss of farmland. That's when you have otherwise good arable land with fertile soil, and for various reasons, usually involving erosion from overgrazing or overcultivation. That's not managing the farmland well. That good soil goes away, and you are left with, instead of arable land, you're left with desert. And of course, the most important resource for human beings is good farmland to grow their food. And when that farmland goes away, especially when your population is growing, that is a severe problem, and of course leads to widespread famine. SS7G3. The student will explain the impact of location, climate, and physical characteristics on population distribution in Africa. Now, this standard only has one element, element A. Explain how the characteristics in the Sahara, Sahel, savanna, and tropical rainforest affect where people live, the type of work they do, and how they travel. Now, one of the cool things about this particular standard is that it overlaps with an important science standard that you've learned this year. That's right. The science connection here is a standard about biomes. That's Science Standard S7L4. And 4 of these are, in fact, biomes. The Sahara is the desert biome in Africa. The Sahel is the semi-arid biome. Savanna is the grassland biome. And the tropical rainforest is, of course, the tropical rainforest biome, which is a biome with lots of rain and, of course, trees. Now, the way that people live and work in these places has a lot to do with what kind of resources they have there, or what kind of resources they don't have there. In the case of the Sahara Desert, you don't have a lot of arable farmland, you don't have a lot of water. The few people who do live there very often are doing so through nomadic herding. Now you have a little bit more rain, a little bit of farmland available in the Sahel region, which is semi-arid, and in the Sahel you see some farming and some herding. You also see farming in the Savannah region, because that's where they do have the land and the rainfall for that. And in the tropical rainforest, of course, you'll have a variety of different occupations, including the timber industry. SS7G4. The student will describe the diverse cultures of the people who live in Africa. All right, element A. Explain the difference between an ethnic group and a religious group. Now, you will remember from previous units that an ethnic group is a group of people who share a common culture and language, while a religious group, that's a group of people who share the same beliefs. And you will remember that not everybody in a particular ethnic group are from the same religious group, and likewise, not all people in a particular religious group come from the same ethnic group. Element B. Explain the diversity of religions within the Arab, Ashanti, Bantu, and Swahili ethnic groups. Now, there's a lot of different ethnic groups in Africa, but these 4 are somewhat emblematic of the continent, and these 4 are the ones that we look at. And the Arab and Swahili ethnic groups are both primarily Muslim. Both those people in those 2 groups are mainly Muslim, whereas in the Ashanti and Bantu ethnic groups, we're looking at a lot of people who follow traditional religions. These would include such things as ancestor worship and animism. Element C. Evaluate how the literacy rate affects the standard of living. Now, you already learned from our economics lessons that literacy rate and standard of living are directly connected. So when the literacy rate goes up, the standard of living also rises. And likewise, if you're in a country where the literacy rate is low, you tend to also see a low standard of living.